Hello, this video is on the competition between Europe, and in that I'll include the United States, versus China and Al Qaeda, and also what a independent Boer republic would mean for Africa. The competition that I'm speaking of is in Africa. Why is Al Qaeda an important factor in Africa? Well, one of the first places that Africa, one of the first parts of Al Qaeda's campaign was in Africa. It started off with the assassination attempts of Saddam way back in the 70s. So in a sense, we've been fighting Al Qaeda for 40 odd years, right? But the Bin Laden and Saudi families, of which Al Qaeda is simply their private army, are investing heavily in Africa. They're investing in farms which do provide some work for Africans, and also Bin Laden has been instrumental in putting in the infrastructure into Sudan. If you take into account that it costs £1 million per mile of freeway, then obviously you can see how much money they've invested, because Sudan's only functional road has been built by Bin Laden affiliate companies. Okay, now of course then there's the question of oil, particularly Nigerian oil, which America is heavily involved in, and of course Al Qaeda is just one arm of the Bin Ladens, their military wing, and the other arm is construction and oil companies. So therefore you will see a gravitation towards America and Al Qaeda confronting each other on the African continent. Now on the other end you have China and Europe confronting each other, because both Al Qaeda and China are back in Sudan, and there is conflict between Europe and Sudan over Darfur and the Chad border. Currently there is 14,000 EU troops in Chad, okay, which is a quieter, which they've been able to keep a quieter presence than of course in Afghanistan. Now, with Boer independence, if we take a thought experiment and say that the Boers gained independence from the ANC-led government in South Africa, which in a sense is the other end of feudalism. They are primitive feudalists, the ANC, whereas the Bin Ladens are technologically advanced feudalists. Okay, it still adds up to the same thing. One family or a group of families owning and telling everybody else what to do, and believing they have ownership over people's lives, the right to kill or to spare, and that's wrong. Okay, now the Boers are the natural allies for both African moderate leaders who want to make their countries modelled on the European Union or America. Now that might seem laughable to people out there who believe that Africa can never fully develop. Well, there are some clear factors to say that Africa will have a much tougher time to develop than other peoples. For instance, the Bantu, a lot of their belief system, which is based on voodooism, and of course the idea of behind the thousands of Muti killings which have involved the murder of people in South Africa and their organs being put into broths for the consumption of these people who believe that they're being cursed or whatever. A lot of that is down to the evolutionary need to avoid people in Africa to live in small communities, and that is because of tropical diseases and malaria. As soon as people started to live in European style urban environments, the amount of malaria and infectious diseases have soared, okay, and of course AIDS is another part of that today. But that can be dealt with through sanitation and education. Okay, now the evidence that the Boers are an African people in a sense is that they are formed from several different European peoples, but in the cauldron of the melting pot of Africa. They have their experience and culture have been formed there, and much like the English were and Americans later were many different peoples, they were formed into one people by that common experience. Okay, it just so happened that in those three instances, the Boers, the English, and the Americans, that they were from similar or the same race, the Nordic Celtic race. Now, the evidence that I'm saying that the Boers are necessary for Africa, Black Africa, as well as that is Bantu Africa, and as well as the San people and the Hottentots who were the original inhabitants of South Africa. But the Boer Republic area, and also the highlands of Kenya, where a lot of English people settled, the so-called expats, those areas were very sparsely populated, and where they weren't covered in thorn bush, or where they were covered in thorn bush, it was the Europeans that carved out farms and made them profitable. And they not only made them profitable, they made them surplus, which allowed the population of Africa to expand. And evidently the Bantu population of Africa has expanded far more than the European population, and that increase in the Bantu population was based on the surplus created by the European population of Africa. Now, when you've got Somalia and Somaliland and Ethiopia and Mozambique and Botswana all trying to get the Boers to go there and farm, doesn't it show that this is not a black versus European phenomenon? There is simply the need for people who know what they're doing with farming and to produce a surplus. You see in Africa that the actual Bantu population, because of when you factor in AIDS, is not in fact increasing, it will crash. And who's going to fill that gap? Is it all going to be nature parks? Well, I'd be for it all being nature parks, but that's not really a way for the whole continent to be run by just some expat rich owners. It has to be farmed. The population of the world needs food. Now, the Chinese are investing heavily in Africa, and so the ethnic makeup of a future Africa will probably be some kind of mix between the Chinese or just purely Han Chinese, as the Chinese have exported nearly 30 million people since the 1990s to Africa. This has been seen by the West as a silent takeover, but while America has really only been involved in terms of use of intelligence agencies and special forces, as they have sort of used these special forces and intelligence agencies and also economic hitmen, as they have tried to do in South America as sort of an imperial force. The European Union has been trying to build up its own presence there. There are some imperial overtones of the European Union, but for mostly it's been through soft power and aid. Now, what I would like to see is a Boer social democratic republic, and also perhaps other mixed European African social democratic republics springing up in East Africa. Partnership between Europe and Africa, and also the United States. And we need to do this because otherwise we're going to leave Africa to Al-Qaeda, and they will continue the progress of Islamic fundamentalism from the Sahara right throughout Africa, as their Arab forebears did with the slave trade. Hope you'll support Boer independence and the EU's help and support for it.